Indeed. I think, long story short, improv is magic. Literal and figurative.
Magic is real.
And
Magic is real. It's just called improv.
Did you know that that's true?
And magic is real, and improv is real, and magic is improv. By the transitive properties.
Oh, hey, all this magic and numbers brings up the question: am I still 7 feet tall? Is Chauncey still 7 feet tall with all of the blessings?
We will deal with that in game. Actually, that's kind of a funny story.
Oh boy! Oh, hello, everybody! Welcome to Knights of Prospect, a live improvised role-playing adventure. Yay. I'm a ghost.
Whoa!
Oh boy! Hi, everybody! Thank you for joining us. We're in for a real treat. Hey, I'm Sam. My name's Sam Hoare. I play Chauncey in the show. We're gonna find out how tall Chauncey is when we get in there. That's what I just learned. Chauncey, used to be young boy wizard. Now emissary of an angel, the militant angel of war. These things happen. All people go through this, and he's in a good place right now. He feels accomplished. He was able to help his buds. We got Phil up to that chair, and that was what a beautiful moment. Hey, Kylie.
Hey, how's it going up there? I'm assuming you're 7 feet tall. So my name is but you're below me, right? No, yeah. You're above me. All right. My name's Kylie Rowlandson. Oh my God. I play Jelly. I was about to say I play Chauncey. I play Jelly. I am a mischievous 11-year-old human thief, and I snuck away from my family and off into the grand adventure that is life in pursuit of unknowns and the great beyond and fame and glory, which are wonderful reasons to do anything. But now I am teamed up with the Knights of Prospect, and I'm a sneaky little thief, and I'm light on my toes, and I am an invaluable and unexpected asset to the crew. I'm here for a party.
I'm Winnie. Winnie is an elven bard who has a knack for communing with fish and singing songs that bring people together and tear them apart. Winnie has technically been physically present for the last couple sessions, but spiritually, player-wise, elsewhere. So is excited to engage with the mysteries of Alveolora and the rest of her crew.
Indeed. And I am John Serpico. I am the game master. It's my job I have a few jobs. I get to play all of the characters that are not currently being played by Sam, or Kylie. Also, I get to adjudicate the roll of dice. So this is a tabletop role-playing game. It's a tabletop adventure. And what that means is every so often, as we are creating this shared narrative, the players are going to want to do something, and the outcome of that something may not be guaranteed. When that's the case, I'm going to ask them to roll dice. And when I do, the players are going to roll 2 6-sided dice. And we're rooting for high numbers here. On a 10 or higher, the thing that they want to happen happens. On a 7 to 9, a little bit of what they want happens. They have to make a difficult choice. On a 6 or less, something they don't want to happen happens, or things get dramatically more complicated. So no matter how the dice hit the table, something happens and the story moves forward. Speaking of stories, one of the other jobs I have is to bring everybody up to speed. So we are currently wrapping up a very big arc. The Knights of Prospect have, via magic and skill and bravery, brought back a lost city of elves called Alveolora. It's literally months of time in game and in the real world to make it happen, and after last week, it has. Alveolora has returned, and so we are wrapping up this big, grand arc. Like, what happens now that this giant magical place is back? And that's what we're going to do for this week and next week, which are, if my math is right, sessions 62 and 63 You've guessed it. We've been doing it for over a year. So that's very exciting. So we got that going on. And that's really all you need to know. Alve Alora, this magical elven city, has returned. And the Knights of Prospect have done it. And now they are all heroes. And they're going to figure out what the aftermath is. So that's the big thing. Oh, one final thing, speaking of stories, is thank you for watching. If you are watching live on twitch.tv/2MB Studios. Thank you if you are watching on YouTube, if you search Knights of Prospect after the fact. And thank you if you are using your ears and listening wherever you get your podcasts, Knights of Prospect, wherever you get your podcasts. So no matter how you are consuming this content, we hope you are enjoying it. Anyway, that's all I need to do as GM, so it is time to get started. Okay, so here's the story. The three of you, as well as the rest of the Knights of Prospect, are in Alve Alora, the ancient and lost elven city that has now winked back into the timeline. And you've all been summoned to a place called the Palace of Thanalis, which is this immense and tall building that's absolutely full of elves that just until recently were thrown 10,000 years back in time. The past few hours have been very wild. To kind of recap recap what the last session has been, you all crossed over the Great Bridge to the plateau. You were followed by over 1,000 orcs. You summoned the Dwarven 6th Legion through a portal. You had a giant battle with the orcs, and eventually Vil, your Forest Revenant Knight of Prospect, got up to the top of the glass spire, which triggered the sudden return of the city. So that all kind of happened. The three of you all have the honor of being the only three of all of the knights that were not immediately led to the great magical healing halls with life-threatening injuries. So the fact that the three of you are kind of standing and on your feet means that you are all brought before the Queen Protector of Alve Alora, an elf named Justira, in her throne room of the castle of Thanalis, the Palace of Thanalis. So let's talk about kind of what's going on here. Elves tend not to show their age at all, at least in a way that humans can easily discern. Winnie, as an elf, you can generally tell roughly how many centuries old someone is. But all of you, elven or human, are pretty sure that Justira is the oldest person you have ever seen. She explains to you that from the perspective of Alve Alora, the army of Karzug the Patriarch was approaching the city only a few hours ago, even though it was in real life over 1,000 years ago. And Justira made the decision, along with her advisors, to send Alve Alora into the distant past. And now Alve Alora has returned. So for them, the morning they saw Karzug the Patriarch marching his army in, they made the decision to wink the entire city back in time. And the second they got back in time, boom, they have now returned to the present 1,000 years later. So for them, the last 1,000 years has been one super interesting afternoon. And so, the Queen Protector Justira kind of explains all of this to you, and kind of ends with this. She's, kind of not necessarily pacing, but she's very active on her feet and holding your attention. She kind of moves like a ship across the water at any given point. And as she's moving, she kind of looks at all of you and says, well, this obviously was a risk, of course, the greatest risk of my life. And frankly, the life of this entire city. What if we never came back? What if the continent sank beneath the waves? What if the prophecies of our return would be misinterpreted? Mere hours ago, everyone in this city was going to either see the sky change and have us propelled into the future, or wink out of existence. And it was all of you that led to the former of those two possibilities coming to pass. And so she kind of lets the gravity of that sink in.
Wow. I have to sit down. The gravity of that is really weighing on me.
Justira smiles for the first time in 1,000 years. Now that we are on the other side of it, we will be able to look back at this decision and note that it was the right one. But if not for you all, it would have been the wrong one. That is the great importance of all of this. If not for you Knights of Prospect, everyone in this city would be gone. Everyone. In a very real sense, we never would have existed to begin with. It is challenging to think about how best to reward a feat like this, the literal saving of every single person that lives in this city. But I do have an idea. I need to discuss it with my advisors, and I must address the city first. I would like you all to come back in a few hours to discuss the nature of the gift that I would like to give you. But before that, do any of you have questions for me?
The world has grown and power has shifted to accommodate the fact that Alveolora no longer exists in this land. I know that this happened very recently, but how do you anticipate navigating the city's return?
To be blunt, with your help. We did not know when we sent this city back how long it would be before the return. For us, it would be minutes. But would we be gone for 50 years? Would we be gone for 100? According to Vil and Gregory, who hopefully right now are being healed, it's been over 1,000. But that is the risk. If you will indulge us, we would like to glean as much from you, a bard, and your comrades in trying to determine where Alveolora fits in this new world. Even for us, 1,000 years is a long time.
I would just be aware that many stories have risen about Alveolora, many of them positive about the wonders of the city, but also many of them very tentative about the power that exists here. I leave you with that.
Your advice is well taken. One of the many reasons that my advisors and I need to digest the passage of time that has happened. If you will indulge us further, the coming days here, as I'll put it to you this way, you've already done the greatest service, and far be it from me to ask you to do any more. But a gem that has winked out of the world has now began to glitter again. And there may be things that, even with the might of the city, we are not prepared for. So if your depths of generosity have not yet been drained, the next several days and weeks will be quite interesting for all of us. And she kind of lets that hang in the air, and then kind of asks if anyone else has anything to say to the queen.
What would have happened if we couldn't bring back Alveolora?
This is a matter of debate between the scholars. If Alveolora technically never returned, that meant that we would always have been held in the ritual that kept us in a moment in time 10,000 years ago. The strength of the ritual would eventually wane, which means that for us, even if it seemed like an instant, that instant would last for an infinity, and eventually we would fade into nothing. The scholars believe it is either painless and calm or agony of excruciating specificity. Mercifully, we did not need to figure out which.
So you waited for us just to figure it out?
We had faith, even if we did not know who we had faith in yet.
But you couldn't even talk to me. You couldn't know that I was once the winner of the magic fair. Now
I see
so powerful
Chauncey.
that I moved past that.
I give Chauncey a loving pat on the shoulder.
Thank you. Yes, I will continue. And now I gained all the blessings for a moment. I don't know if you saw me. I was pretty tall, so you probably could have, but you didn't know that. So I just I'm confused about your decision.
I could tell from your vestments that you are an emissary of a divine being.
Yes.
You made a choice to become an emissary.
Mm-hmm.
You did not know what it would entail. You did not know what path it would lead you down. You did not know what this mighty divine patron would give you. Yet you still looked at your world and looked at yourself and found faith within and said, yes, I'm willing to try this. Results be damned, so to speak. We are much like you.
Wow.
Yeah. Guys, this queen is great.
Really wise.
Super wise. Super awesome.
I think it's true. Sometimes seeing isn't believing. Believing is seeing. I heard that once from a piece of theater called The Santa Claus, starring Tim Allen.
One of the great bards of the North, I am sure.
Of course.
She kind of ponders the nature of this and kind of stands, and a number of attendants kind of swarm around you. And and she says, there will be a great sounding of bells in a few hours. Take that as your invitation to return. But until then, the run of the city is yours. There is much to see. All thanks to you. And with that, she kind of dramatically turns away from you, and you all feel like now is the perfect time to leave. So really, the big question now is, you'll be back in a couple of hours, and you have in front of you the largest and most beautiful city you have ever seen just sitting in front of you. So let me tell you what's going on, and then you can tell me how you all want to kill a couple hours. It could all be you doing the same stuff. It could be you doing different stuff. Dealer's choice. But here are the things that are made immediately apparent to you. One, most of the Knights of Prospect are badly hurt and are in a place called the Great Halls of Healing, where they are being attended to by purveyors of ancient and powerful healing magics. So they're pretty much everybody you know is badly hurt and getting tended to. The 6th Dwarven Legion, who you all summoned through a portal in the side of a mountain to come here, are hanging out with Alveolora's noble guard. They're called the Redwood Guard. And so you've got these modern Dwarven legionaries talking to the mighty Redwood Guard of 1,000 years ago. And they are having what is undoubtedly one of history's most imposing meet and greets out on the muster grounds of the city. So you've got folks in all kinds of crazy armor, talking to each other, and the dwarves are singing songs, and the elves are being polite, and everyone's thanking everyone else, and there are refreshments. So that's happening. Also, there is a place here called the Caverns of Knowledge, and it is a library, an enormous library. And in this library are the great tomes of the elves. So, there were 3 great elven cities the city that now became Tower Town, Alveolora, and Sentinel. And all three were centers of like tremendous, profound millennia of learning. And y'all have never been to Sentinel. So this is the first time you're really actually in one of the great elven library cities. There's also a group of people called the Ancient Arcane, which are a group of like master elven wizards. They were the ones that sent the city back in time to begin with, and they're just kind of around. And then also Dolly is being repaired. So those are just kind of things that are happening. But also this city has literally anything you could possibly want to see or do. And it is becoming, news of the Knights of Prospect, news that the city has returned to the present. All of that is starting to like flow through the city now. So, this is a very interesting moment to be who you are. So the big question is, big cool city just returned to the present. You are by the minute growing in fame. So what do you all want to do?
Winnie, I think, like the second she walks out the door, she has heard stories of Alveolora, and she's like, this is an amazing opportunity. I wonder how much is true of the songs that I've heard. Like, does water really flow upwards in the fountains in the center of the city? And are the guards that guard the library actually half cat? And oh my gosh, it's been 1,000 years. What about inflation? Is our money all of a sudden worth a lot here? We could buy so much stuff with so little. And she goes on and on with the possibilities.
Exactly. So let's start there. Let's have you roll 2d6 plus your wisdom for a discern realities check. I'm going to give you a +1 on top of that because you've got free reign of the place, and you are in a very, very unique position to figure out a lot of this stuff. So roll it and tell me what you get.
9.
All right, partial success. So here's what I'm going to do. You can right now, Winnie, describe something about Alveolora that will be canonically true in this world. It could literally be anything at all.
All right. What is canonically true about Alveolora is that there is there is a species of butterfly that exists here, that if you find one and it lands on you, it will grant you additional insight into your future.
Yes.
The species of butterfly has never been seen in 1,000 years, but there is great tell of those who have been blessed by its presence, who have gained insight into their future and have used that knowledge for both good and for ill. Yeah.
There is, in point of the many songs about Alveolora, there's one called The Glimmering Butterflies. And in a lot of ways, it's the most ridiculous because it suggests that, the greatest and most influential people of kind of the far past, the distant past, all made a pilgrimage to Alveolora to see into their future. And then they used what they learned to change the world. And like, it's almost one of these like sweeping history stories where it's like an easy way to bang out like a dozen verses about famous people. And you're like, oh, this is clearly like a construct of a bardic college, like just to get random peasantry to learn about history. But no, that is absolutely true.
Oh
some of the most fearsome warlords that have ever lived, some of the most benevolent rulers that have ever existed. All of them have come to Alve Alora and, summited the mountain and caught the glimmering butterflies and saw some moment in their future and essentially crafted a life around that. And there isn't the way you learn this is you go to the caverns of knowledge, which is kind of a misnomer. It's not like a cavern. It is a cathedral of a library with the kindest, most patient people who have dedicated centuries to knowledge, just helping you learn stuff. Like, it's the most peaceful, this is Bardic heaven. There is even a beautiful tavern in it where bards can workshop songs that they are working on in the library. And so you go in and there is literally an old visitor's log for, the Great Butterfly Preserve up in the mountains. And you're looking and it's just like a who's who of warlords and Nobel laureates. Just there, signed in their own hand for the last 5,000 years. So what that means canonically, thanks to Winnie, is that if you return to Alve Alora and summit the mountain and visit the magical butterfly, nesting up there, you will learn about your future in a way that you can absolutely exploit for fame and fortune.
All that for a 9.
All that for a 9.
That's very good.
Yeah, that ain't bad. Yeah, so that's happening. What else do you want to go on? What else do you want to do before you get called back?
Before the bells.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to do something with Chauncey. I feel like we should bond or something.
Oh, hey, yeah. Yeah, no, bonding sounds really fun. I just had 2 stops I really wanted to make, Jelly. So we could compromise, or you could come along with my stops. What are we feeling? What's your?
I feel like I'd want to learn a little bit more about you. So
Oh,
it's
perfect.
Bring your thief to work day. So
you want
to learn about what it is that you would do, and I'll be your shadow because I'm.
You want to shadow me? See what a real angel emissary day on the job is like?
I'll sneak real quiet.
Okay, that's perfect. Okay, Jelly. Okay, yeah.
It's good practice. It's good practice for me too because I gotta up my sneaking game. I gotta stay on my toes.
Yeah, because we're kind of famous now, so the 2 of us it's gonna be even harder. But
yes, I think this will be good. This will be good exercise for me, so I can keep my skill set really sharp, really sharp, and I'll learn a little bit about you, which I think could be helpful for the overall group dynamic.
Perfect. Well, you'll work on your sneaking and group dynamic, and I want to discover the history and source of all power. So,
those are comparable goals.
Jelly, you want to try to squeeze in 2 stops? Would you want to try? Do you want to try wizards or library first?
Oh, let's try wizards.
Okay, wizards it is.
Sure. So let's have you roll a sneak check first, just because you're practicing. 2d6 plus dexterity, please.
Okay. I got a 10.
Whoa. Nice. So you and Chauncey go to visit. It is both a group of people and a place. It's called the Ancient Arcane. It is a simultaneously a college of sorcery and also a almost a religious order and a group of battle mages. It's roughly 100 elite ancient elven sorcerers that are in this giant circular stone building that is covered in living plants that look like shimmering glass and It's ringed with statues made of elven glass, but the statues are moving and waving to you and things like that. And so, Jelly, you're thinking to yourself, those are definitely like animated magical statues that can see all and know all. I should try to sneak past them. And magically you do. Like you're able to like walk through the grounds of the ancient arcane, somehow avoiding the gaze of the countless glass statues that their literal only job in this world is to look for people. And you somehow are able to make your way around the grounds, and you discover essentially a back door into the ancient arcane. There's this big grand entryway into the building, and you instead find like essentially a delivery door. And you sneak in, and you know what? With a 10, this will be fun. You find something of immense, dare I say, dangerous power that you can just take. So, what is that thing?
Something of immense, dangerous power. This is a pair of moccasins made out of beaver fur. They are vibrating. They are. If you try to wear them, it is hard to know what would happen to everything about the universe.
Yes. So you find yourself walking through the ancient arcane, and there are elves of impossible age and power wearing robes and have like orbs floating around them and stuff, and they're just like walking through the halls, and they pay you no mind because their logic is, if you're in here, it means you're supposed to be. Because if not, the dozens and dozens of elven glass statues whose only job it is to keep out thieves, let you in. So yeah, you end up kind of finding your way into, one of these, like this great like artificer's chamber. And there's all kinds of wild stuff in here, like stuff that is floating and stuff that looks like just like balls of energy and stuff. And despite all of the things that of like impossible danger in here, there is only one thing in this room that is like locked. And it is this like kind of glass bell jar that is like covered in, they're called caster locks. There's like super powerful magic locks. And it's like a pair of like relatively simple looking beaver fur moccasins. So you walk in, and there are like artificers that are like working on some big wild thing. And you kind of walk past them, and you're like, oh, geez, caster locks. I've read about these in books. And you end up like getting them open. And you take a pair of moccasins made of beaver fur. Be sure to write them on your sheet. And I will put it to you this way. These beaver fur moccasins are vibrating like crazy, and holding them makes you feel weird. And also, if you wear them, you can do one impossible thing. So just be sure to write those down. These are beaver fur moccasins that give you a wish.
Oh, yeah.
So, that's all going on. And you hear somewhere else in the building, a cluster of elven wizards like talking to Chauncey about stuff. So like you kind of like stuff them in like a shoebox and like put it in a bag and walk out like you bought them. And you see Chauncey like a couple of hallways over, talking. And so let's kind of pop over to that. So yeah, Chauncey, you in essence, like when you walk in, do you kind of say, hey, I'm here to learn the secrets of the universe, or do you play it a different way?
With these wizards, hello. I am. You may recognize my power as being angelic. It was once a different power. I cast spells much like yourselves. For you all, I'd like to ask what's the difference? Why did some power leave and some power come? Why can you still cast spells in this way?
So, yeah, you present yourself, and word has already spread to the ancient arcane that you are one of the great architects of the return of the city, and you are treated as a hero and a friend. And the irony, of course, is these are elves that are 500 years old, and you are 10 or 11 years old at this point. I think you might be 11 at this point.
Canonically 11-ish.
Yeah, and you are now. What's very interesting, Chauncey, that you have found is when you are wearing like the vestments of the militant. I'll put it to you this way: when you are just Chauncey and you're walking around, everyone treats you like an 11-year-old. When you're wearing the vestments, it's 50-50. Sometimes people think you are some kind of religious servant. Other times they think you are a kid playing dress up. The only two groups of people in the world that treat you like an equal and a peer are the Knights of Prospect and the Elves of the Ancient Arcane. Like you come in and you start asking the big questions, and like no one does like the patronizing, like, all right, buddy, let's get you something to eat first, and then we'll talk about the great mysteries. Like the second you start talking about this, one of the Elves of the Ancient Arcane, an elf named who is in here? Mornoran of the Ancient Arcane, essentially kind of pauses you only to say, my friend, questions of this profundity are not meant to be asked in a hallway. Let us take you to the Great Observatory.
Oh, I hope there are snacks there.
The finest. And you are led into a place called the Great Observatory, which certainly lives up to the name. It is on the top floor of this absolutely bananas building. It's this huge domed room, and the ceiling of which you can tell it's powerful because the presence of the militant above you dims when you get in here. This place is so full of magic that it almost has a pulse. And in the Great Observatory, you are able to observe anything in history that has been witnessed by an elf who has, at some point in their life, given their knowledge to the Ancient Arcane. So, you ask about the nature of like magic and faith, and what you learn is the history of religion, like all of it. The story, such as it is for you, is that the Enteresh, the great god of humankind, was not always a god. He was an explorer. He brought humans to the continent that you're on. And when he arrived, it was through his diplomacy that he was able to find a place for his people. Essentially, he brought humans to this continent because they were being persecuted elsewhere. They left where they were from because they could no longer be safe there. And the elves took in humankind upon the shores. So it's like, okay, so how is Enteresh a god? Well, Enteresh is a god because there was a conclave of angels that decided to exalt him as a god. Which means that the militant isn't an angel of Enteresh. Enteresh is also a servant of the militant. So that kind of flips your understanding fundamentally of the entire world on its head. there is a great conclave of angels that all represent some aspect of life. The militant is the angel of war. There is also an angel of peace. There is an angel of, of profundity and vision. There is an angel of the skies. All of these angels, and they're not, for you, they're angels, but different groups of people around the continent and around the world interpret these angels and their works in different ways. So what that all means to you is these angels very, very rarely work directly with the continent. They kind of set things in motion and see what happens. The fact that you are an emissary of the militant means you are the only emissary of the militant. It also means you are one of the few human beings of the last 5,000 years that has been made an emissary. So all that is to say, you gave up a really, really important thing. You gave up your innate connection to the arcane. And the militant believed that was a great enough sacrifice that the militant would bestow you with a gift that the militant has not given out in thousands of years. So that's the story there. The angels are the great shapers of the world. And the angel took something from you so that it could give you something else. You see this in remarkable clarity on the roof of this building.
That was beautiful. Right?
And the snacks are outstanding.
Oh.
I've been disguised as your shadow for the whole story.
No way!
Jelly emerges.
I know when a good story is being told.
Yeah, there are, a number of you end up kind of seeing this. Raz, unsurprisingly, is here, despite the fact that he sustained grievous injuries earlier today. He essentially comes here swaddled up like a mummy because there is news that Chauncey is asking a conclave of wizards questions about creation. And so kind of half the knights are all in here. So yeah, the story, such as it is, Chauncey, is, and this is something that will be profoundly impactful as Knights of Prospect continues on, is the closer you get to the militant's purpose for you, the more powerful he will make you.
Ooh.
So like things you are doing now, the militant is granting you power. But if you're able to figure out what the militant wants, and the militant's not going to tell you, but if you're able to figure it out, the militant will be granting you greater and greater power so that its will be done upon the earth.
This was a very heavy, but very well produced presentation. Raz, honestly, I was hoping Raz did not see that. I was worried that Raz's world might get a little topsy-turvy type.
Yeah, Raz is grappling with some big questions right now. The fact of the matter is, Enteresh is a man-made god, and, Enteresh himself is speaking to Raz, and that is pretty important. But yeah, this is, the elves of Alveolora have access to the great histories that the rest of the world cannot possibly. So, there's a lot to process here.
Yeah. And I know this, that was incredible. That was beautiful. It's a quick follow-up cue. I understand if it's unanswerable. Mornaran, just quick follow-up. Where'd the angels come from? Just throw it out there. If it's okay if you don't, you know a lot. So
we're gonna have you roll. Let's have this be 2d6 plus intelligence, but a -2 because this is almost impossible to know.
Intelligence -2. Got it. Okay. Nine.
Oh,
Very close.
Pretty good.
that's what I'm about.
Yeah, I'll give you a piece of the grand creation narrative, sure. So the way the ancient arcane gathers and retains their magical knowledge is because the great wizards of the ancient arcane try to come back to Alveolora at the end of their life so that they can kind of release their knowledge into the great fountain, so to speak. And nothing about where angels come from has ever been observed because angels predate everything. But the collective knowledge and research of the ancient arcane leads everyone to believe that angels had sprung into existence sometime before elves, dwarves, humans. Like there were angels on this plane of existence, and their angels appeared on this plane of existence in response to some threat from without. It's almost as if the mortal plane conjured angels to protect itself, but that's some wild stuff. They were not made by anything of this earth. So that's about as close as you can get.
Did you see that? We almost had it all.
Almost got all.
Let's get it all racked up, figured out.
The grand creation narrative.
I know. Tried to sneak my way in there.
During the Q&A section.
Yeah.
Of the
They got their.
That's
their
why
tire.
you stick around for the Q&A.
Yeah, that's right. They already snacked on some cheese. Their guard is down.
Like a lot of people, they want to go out to the parking lot and get on their horse and beat the traffic.
Nope.
No.
Nope.
Stick around for the Q&A because that's where the good stuff. That's where the good stuff comes from.
You bought your ticket. You want to see the show?
You want to see the show? Stay for the encore. Damn it. Speaking of, with that, there is a stunning chorus of bells that plays throughout the city. While you were in here, the queen and a number of her heralds kind of updated everybody in the city about what had happened. That the spell worked and they went back in time, and then the return spell worked and they have returned, and it's been 1,000 years. And the thing about Alveolora and like elven cities is they are fairly isolated. So, the elves are kind of processing. It's like, oh no, there's like a distant cousin of mine that doesn't live here. I probably need to talk to their grandkids. So there's like a lot of that. But yeah, so news of what has happened has kind of spread through the city. And so by the time you all leave the Cavern of Knowledge and the Ancient Arcane, and you start kind of walking back towards the palace.
Tossing pamphlets. It's me, Chauncey, the one you heard about. Pamphlet. And I'm trying to
picking these up and reading them.
I'm like,
even if it's written in a language they've never seen before, they are doing their darndest.
I'm paying a lot of.
You have never seen a more receptive crowd.
Trying to see if I'm slightly more powerful every time someone starts reading it. I pick up my staff.
You don't know whether you're powerful or just like well hydrated.
I feel good.
This is now going to be a thing that occupies part of your thinking. It's like, is this specifically what the militant wants?
I'm pretty sure this is it.
Yeah, it's got to be it, right? So you've got that going on, and you come back, but yeah, it's people are out, and children and redwood guards and all these people, like they are really more or less the entire city is united in a song of thanks. Specifically, Winnie, this is a song this is and you don't play it much because there are very few audiences that would appreciate it. It's one of the high elven songs of thanks, one of the great and ancient songs that to hear somewhere north of 50,000 people singing it all at once, echoing off of stone, echoing against the great bowl of the plateau, coming from every window. all saying thank you in the mother tongue of the elves is, shall we say, an experience you will remember for the rest of your life.
Very moving.
Yeah.
And I sing along.
It's when you start
loudly
singing
and proudly.
There are cheers that are coming up from the people around you. Like people, like elves are running out of their homes playing instruments, and there's now this like procession back to the palace. Over the course of the few hours in which the queen addressed the city and spoke to her advisors, and you all kind of engaged in what you wanted to engage in, the other Knights of Prospect that had been badly hurt are now almost miraculously healed. The only one of your number, even though she's not technically a Knight of Prospect, that is not yet here is Dolly. The dwarven Sixth Legion is very insistent on repairing Dolly themselves instead of like letting elven magicians do it. So Dolly is currently in a couple of big parts, like in the muster grounds, but everyone else is currently walking to the palace. And with that, the great queen protector Justira tells you how you will be thanked. So I'm going to give you all two options. These are pretty significant, so think them through. You will be deciding on behalf of the rest of the knights. There are two things that Alveolora, with all of its power, can do for you. The first is called the bounty. So option one is the bounty. You will all be led into the depths of the healing halls, where the great mages of the ancient arcane will conduct the most complicated ritual they can, which is called the bounty. There are three things, if you choose this, that will happen to you and the rest of the knights. One of your traits will permanently increase by 1. Your expected lifespan will double, and you will become immune to all known poisons and most diseases. So that is the bounty. Option 2 is the tether. And this requires a bit of a history lesson from the queen. When Alveolora, Sentinel, and Tower... Actually, I'm not going to look up their true names. But when Alveolora, Tower Town, and Sentinel were built in a prior age, in the High Age of the Elves, it was speculated by the great scholars of the time that a permanent portal that could be opened between those locations. Magical portals are very, very dangerous and very, very expensive. Like the magical portal that got you here to the Orcish lands to begin with was the result of like someone in Tower Town, spending the resource equivalent of building a private jet. Like it's impossible to do them. Like the Great Dwarven March through the portal to get here, that was something that they needed to figure out like 1,500 years ago. Mm. Like mages like lost their lives building that. But with Alveolora, Tower Town, and Sentinel, due to where they are in the world, how they were built, the great ley lines of the earth, it was speculated that a permanent portal could be opened between these locations. So here's how that means. This is what the tether is. The Knights of Prospect will be given a chapter house in Alveolora, like Etama, only here. And it will be tethered via a permanent portal to Etama. So you will be able to, as simply as opening a big metal door, immediately travel between Tower Town and here.
Is this a portal that anyone could gain access to, assuming they got their way to the portal?
Technically, yes, but the queen needs you to do something to make that not the case. Like portals are kind of tricky. It's the portal would kind of need to be protected from either side. So like technically, if like a great army destroyed the Knights of Prospect and Etama, and the only thing standing was the doorway, they'd be able to like march into Alveolora. But yeah, I mean, essentially, unless you protect the door, it's just like a permanent open portal between these two locations. Just they are joined as if they are in proximity.
Well, the three best decision makers in the Knights of Prospect are here. So let's mull this over carefully.
Did you say mulled cider? No, you said mull this over.
I said mull this over, but I think there was mulled cider.
We'll get it after.
Are you sure? Okay, you're right. Focus up. Yep.
I can wet my whistle after. Okay, choices. Oh!
My initial worry is that I'm just worried about how a portal to a magical city with a lot of power
could go wrong.
Could go wrong. Exactly.
Oh, yes. Could. You think it can go wrong?
I think it could.
Okay.
Sure. Right.
Maybe.
Because one of these options, it's a direct enhancement of ourselves, of our lifespans, of our traits, of our strengths.
Yeah.
So that is completely different than the sort of external resource of a door. They're different. What do we value?
What do we value?
So much. But, if we need to go back to Tower Town, which we will, to be able to come immediately back and learn so much more from this city without having to travel, back and forth all this time, that could also be very valuable.
Right. You cut down on a commute. Commutes shave years off your life. In some way, that is lengthening our lifespan.
Yeah. Frankly, it may more than double our effective lifespan.
That's something about commutes. That is something I think about.
Does somebody have the charts on this? How far is it?
Yeah, so the thing is, Alveolora remains in the Orcish lands. It's in a mountain range. So getting back here would require you to like go through the Dominion of Vor and like march beyond the Great Gate fortresses into kind of Orcish territory again. Like you approached Alveolora from the south, and there are just like the further north you get in the Orcish wildlands, the closer you get to the war zone. So, you approached Alveolora kind of from the back through like the endless keening fields and the swamp empire and all of that. It's almost like you were going through the countryside. But, there are Orcish fortresses between here. You're like 3/4 of the way up towards Vor. But like that last quarter is like great Orcish barricades, like Orcish war cities, their great foundry cities are here and stuff like that. So getting back here would be really hard.
Oh. Wow.
So really what it comes down to is you are choosing between permanently getting stronger and retaining access to a place of infinite wonder.
Oh, it's infinite wonder.
But it comes with the strings of, there's now just like a gateway.
Oh.
But thankfully, you get to decide which is which and which is the right answer.
Oh, God.
And I just get to watch.
I mean, if we get the tether, I'll be able, assumably that's still closer, so I can check in on that the kind of grouping of orcs that I introduced politics to, and I introduced democracy, but I'd be able to check on them and be like, hey, well, maybe based on how this group is functioning, here's this idea, but I want to hear your ideas, and then it'd be easier. So that's 1+ for the tether.
That's true. What is going to enhance more readily our day-to-day? I would say, are we finding that diseases and being poisoned, or these, I'm trying to think about what is going to serve us.
Well, I mean, Jelly, I think one of us has been poisoned fairly frequently.
I actually don't usually find it.
Right. Yeah. But you seem to be fine with it. You do it fairly often to yourself.
I'm just trying to.
Yeah, I do recall over these past months and years, a badly poisoned jelly just falling out of frame.
Yeah, that's true. I've taken a spill more than once. My body just sort of giving way. That's true, beneath the burden of poison coursing through my veins.
Jelly, is your bag shaking?
Don't look at that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't.
That's a story for another time, but it is something that you are going to be really interested in when I let you know about it.
Okay.
It's a good little treat that I picked up.
Love a treat. Oh, sorry, Winnie.
I was just going to say, I think that as much as I want a personal advantage, I think that it will benefit us and other people more to tether every place.
That's an interesting point, because we could send people through strategically to refuge, like get out, like go to safety or something like this. Someone else could. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, that's to be honest, that show earlier today was, if I lived 2 lives without that, it would be less than 1 with it. That beautiful projection on the observatory, incredible.
Yeah,
incredible
I'd rather be on the ground poisoned and wow, that beautiful, majestic, quiet.
That would be better.
Place.
Than just standing around not experiencing that.
Yeah, what's the point of sober, quiet, calm reality? I need wonder, even if I am going to be at the mercy of a poison.
And I need, you said strategic. That I wrote that really big in that pamphlet. I swear I've heard the militant use that word before. I think that I need strategic. We got to have placement. We got to be able to move locations. Who knows, what could happen.
Who knows?
And I haven't been poisoned. Well, I mean, there was one time I almost died when I was shot with a poisoned arrow, but that was one time.
That was only once.
I actually haven't thought about that for a while.
Yeah, and I already know how I'm gonna die.
But what?
I actually do know how I'm gonna die.
Oh, yeah.
And
you do?
That's right.
Some nights when you close your eyes, that's all you can see.
Right.
Yeah, I learned it because I touched an archway.
Yeah, you shouldn't do that.
I learned it, and
Jelly,
so I know.
I'm sorry,
it's
I forgot
poison.
that. Jeez.
I know it's not by poison. So
Well, that's a whole third of a part of. Jeez, I haven't thought about that arrow.
I say we tether. I feel us leaning towards it.
I can feel us leaning. Everybody's leaning to their
leaning.
right.
We're leaning to our Jelly's right.
Everybody's leaning.
And you know what? I would say, here's a joke for everyone. I'm attached to the I'm tethered to the idea.
Oh my god.
I get nervous in front of the queen. She's really cool.
That's good. I get it.
And so it is spoken. The queen appears very pleased with the decision.
Oh, okay, good.
Thank goodness.
Because what that means is that the Knights of Prospect are both philosophically and very practically the first link Alvea Laura has back to the modern world.
Didn't even think about that.
The Queen herself leads a procession to your chapter house. It is in the city of Alvea Laura. It is it's kind of this, I mean, compared to some of the other great high spires, smaller than most of the other buildings that you see here. But it is up this beautiful winding path, one of the few paths in Alvea Laura that isn't perfectly straight. There's this little mound on the plateau, and on it sits the Knights of Prospect's new chapter house, the Ishnor. A building nearly as old as time, one of the first built in Alvea Laura, a place with an ancient and storied history. Just as Etama was built before most of Tower Town, Ishnor was built before most of Alvea Laura. To create the tether, the Queen explains to you in your new southern home, you will need, with the help of the Great Redwood Guard, to travel through the mountains to one of the ancient elven vaults and return with something called a ley lantern. 2 of them, technically. The journey will be perilous, but should you secure those ley lanterns, the tether will be created, and the last chapter of the Alvea Laura arc will be done. And that we will do next week.
Oh!
Woo!
We did it.
We did it.
You did it. This was an entire session of you getting cool stuff.
Hell yeah.
I got moccasins.
You got moccasins. I love it. I was like, I'm gonna go find out about a power, and I'm like going through the gate, and you're just like, oh yay! You have.
We've got prophetic butterflies.
Yes.
Yep.
Great.
There are
An
prophetic
awesome
butterflies on a mountain, a pair of impossible moccasins, the true creation narrative of human faith,
close.
and now a magical door between your 2 homes. So not too bad for a day's work. But anyway, speaking of great gifts, thank you, audience, for being the greatest gift of all. Thanks to all of you that are listening to this. Wherever you get your podcasts, the Knights of Prospect podcast is delightful, and it is delightful because you all enjoy it. And thank you also to everyone watching on YouTube, and thank you especially to everyone watching live right here on 2MB Studios on Twitch. If you like getting your comedy on Twitch, good news, you are getting your comedy right now, and you can go to twitch.tv/2MB Studios any day of the week and find fun, exciting stuff on the channel. Like, subscribe, support them financially or spiritually or both. We certainly do, at least spiritually, but it is a delightful home for this show. And speaking of great gifts, thank you as always to our wonderful tech for our live show, Marissa Farmer, who is the reason why you can see and hear us, and is responsible for all of the amazing graphics and transition effects and music, which is awesome and epic. So anyway, we will be back next Saturday with the denouement of the Alvea Laura arc and the creation of the Great Tether, and we will see you then. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.